What's the confession that's been weighing on you? Story 1. I am now an 18-year-old male living in Mumbai. Since childhood, I've had a painful confession that I've never been able to share with anyone. I know most people may not believe me, but I need to say this anyway. I was abused for nearly 4 years by people in my own family. When I was in second grade, I went on a trip to Rajasthan with my cousin and grandparents. While my grandparents slept on the bed, my older cousin and I were on the floor. That night, he made me do things no child should ever experience. When we returned to our home in Rajasthan, things got worse. He continued to take advantage of me in ways that still haunt me. I live in a joint family and there are 4 of us boys. The older son of my uncle who lives with us and is close with that cousin also began to abuse me. He started doing the same things, forcing me into horrible situations. This continued from 3rd grade through 6th grade. Eventually, 2 or 3 more cousins got involved in it too. By some miracle, things never went further than they already had. If they had, I truly believe I would have been in even more serious emotional and physical danger. Now I feel extremely low about everything. I don't know what to do. I still have to see that cousin every day and pretend nothing ever happened. Story 2. I am still in shock about this. I 36 feet lost my father, 77 meters, the day before my birthday, in January of this year. I had quit 2 of my 3 jobs to be his full-time caretaker. Around November, the one just before January, we started having sewer problems. The basement flooded. We gutted everything, got the kids new items and refinished our basement. Then the sump pump broke in December and the basement flooded again. We had switched everything to metal for easier cleanup. In January, we were quoted $14,000 to fix our sewer line. We are broke. Like one income minimum wage paycheck to paycheck broke. My husband lost his job the last week of November, so it was just me because he had gotten hurt. My father was very sick, and he called me when he was dying. I made it there in time to speak to him and hold his hand before I had to start CPR waiting for the ambulance to arrive. He never woke up, and the next day I had to make the decision to remove life support with my brothers in agreement. After he passed, I had to put all my feelings aside and went full-time at my part-time job. I got a $10,000 loan to cover the funeral costs. Funerals are so expensive. Needless to say, getting the sewer line fixed was pretty low on my priority list. I went into a major depression scholar autopilot mode for the next 3 months. My husband has finally healed and back to work. But reality came crashing down on me, and I decided to make my health a priority. I've really been focusing on doctor appointments, therapy, diet, and exercise, anything to help me cope. 2, my oldest daughter, 15 and a half, told me tonight that the last time the basement flooded, she didn't clean her room. For 4 months, she has lived in a still, wet, moldy room, covered in clothes, blankets, trash, and I don't know what else because I had stopped paying attention to what I was putting in trash bags. We had to cut the bottom 2 feet of her entire room door drywall and bleach everything else remaining. Now we have to replace the boards, and it still doesn't fix the dang sewer. How do people afford anything? My husband and I both have jobs and are just trying to pay off everything while keeping our heads afloat. I feel so bad that I was so lost I didn't see my own child drowning in depression right beside me. This girl is my strong oldest kid. Sometimes I forget that the oldest kids take on too much responsibility and have to be reminded to take a break. I feel so guilty. I just can't believe she was living like this. How was this okay? I wish she had just told me I would do anything for my babies. I know I was going through a lot, but I would have dropped everything if she had just told me she needed help. She's in my bed currently because there is still more to do in hers tomorrow. She feels guilty because we are doing this cleaning on Mother's Day, but I told her I can't celebrate being a mom when my child isn't living in a healthy environment. What I want for Mother's Day is to know my children are safe, clean, and know they are loved. Otherwise, what would be the point of celebrating at all? Story 3. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to anyone about this, apart from my mom who seemed to brush it off. But it's been weighing on my mind for days. A little bit of context, I'm a 16-year-old girl in high school who was part of her high school band. Cool, right? No. I had an epiphany this year during a performance outside of school that I had worked really hard for during the fall semester. It was funny because as I looked at all the students playing alongside me with their giddy attitudes, I suddenly realized I truly hate this. And no, I'm not someone who hates people having joy. I simply didn't like the environment I was in. It was a place full of passionate band students. I felt like an imposter almost. Mind you, I've had several moments like this in my own school band, where I felt like I wasn't really a part of the group. During many of our marching band competitions, I would constantly be staring at my phone, silently praying for time to pass so I could go home. Meanwhile, everyone else seemed like they were having so much fun and making great memories. I remember at one of our marching showcases, the one that would decide if we made state or not, we placed 15th out of around 20 bands, which is a terrible score. To make state, we would have needed to place in the top 3 at least. The point is, I saw many of my bandmates sobbing, genuinely devastated. And me, I was just thinking, yes, the season is over. No more marching band. On the bus ride home, everyone was quiet and I could still hear faint sobs from seniors and others. That's when it hit me again. I truly hate this. I don't belong here. Fast forward to the spring semester and I had made up my mind. I was quitting band. Once I made that decision, it felt like everything in my life suddenly made sense. I had a sort of mental clarity I'd never experienced before. It felt really good. However, I still kept following my usual band routine. I showed up an hour early for rehearsal for individual practice. I attended rehearsals, concerts, and everything else. Maybe this is why my band directors didn't expect to see that band was no longer on my schedule for the next school year. Usually, kids who are planning to quit start slacking off. They stop showing up as much and stop trying as hard as they used to. What's the point, they'd say. That wasn't me, though. It had never been me. About a month ago, one of my band directors, the nice one, called me into his office to discuss why I was quitting. I lied to him and said I was quitting because of the band costs and the time commitment. If you remember the band competitions I was talking about, those events take a minimum of 12 hours. I usually leave for school on a Saturday at 6 a.m. and come back around 1 a.m. if I'm lucky, and that's separate from the before-school rehearsals Monday through Friday and the after-school ones. Anyway, he tried to convince me to stay, saying there were scholarship opportunities to cover the current costs of band and that he would talk to my parents about the time commitment and everything. But I stood firm and told him my decision was final. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. About a week later, the other band director ambushed me while I was practicing before school and started lecturing me about how I was throwing away thousands of dollars in scholarship opportunities. He basically said I was making a grave mistake that would ruin my future. I stared at the wall the entire time he spoke. Not a single word did I say to him. He repeated this again about a week later. Then finally, they both called me into their office to ask why I was quitting again. By then, I had dropped the excuse about cost and time and just admitted I just don't want to do it anymore. I don't feel like I'm growing as part of this group. Then the second band director actually had the audacity to say, "That's not a good enough reason. I feel like this is just a teenage rebellion phase." After that, they both brought up scholarships again, and I simply dismissed myself from their office. I gestured to the door and said, "I'd like to go back to rehearsal." Last week, I received a text from one of the seniors in the band that read, "You're quitting." I replied, "Yes, how did you know?" I was shocked because the only people who knew were my family and my band directors. She texted back that she found out from the second band director. She said he mentioned that someone from the Wind Symphony band, which is like the varsity team, was quitting. And when she asked who he told her it was me, she obviously downplayed what he had done. That same week in my chemistry class, I said hi to one of the trumpet players from that director's band. He said hi back and then asked, "Are you okay?" I was confused by the question and asked, "Why?" He went on to tell me he had heard I was quitting. I nodded and asked, "Who told you?" He said it was the band director. Then one of his friends added, "He told everyone during rehearsals that you were quitting because you didn't have friends." I was mortified. I didn't even know what to say, so I just replied, "If that's what he thinks, let him think that." I was so embarrassed that he would say that to not just one student, but to around 30. He might as well have told the entire band of about 100 students. Just last Friday, I had another encounter with a freshman in his band, someone I had never spoken to before. He waved at me and said hi. I said hi back, but I knew it was because of the "she doesn't have friends" comment. It angered me so much. It's like the entire band now sees me as this loner, which I don't necessarily mind. But it's so unfair how my personal decision was shared with everyone. I mean, what was the point of calling me into your office? You might as well have discussed it on a loudspeaker. Story 4. Freshman year, I struggled to make friends. I'm black and moved to the US at 16, so I already felt out of place. I became close with a group of friends, friend group A, especially one girl V. We were touchy and close. One night at a frat party, we both got drunk and kissed. I thought it was mutual, but others in the group were uncomfortable and things spiraled fast. Around the same time, I shared some personal trauma with another group, Group B, and apparently mentioned a story about making a girl in high school uncomfortable, hugging her when she didn't want it. That got around and rumors started. V later told me she felt uncomfortable being around me. I owned up, apologized, and tried to make amends, but it didn't stop the social fallout. I drifted away from that first group and joined another, Group C. Things seemed better until I got called into the Title I-X office. I wasn't in trouble, but was warned to be more aware of how I interact with women. That on top of bad grades and stress at home, almost drove me to the edge. A random moment watering my uncle's garden pulled me back. I came back sophomore year ready to change. I went to counseling, stayed sober, and got involved on campus again. Club shows, comedy groups. Things were looking up until an anonymous Yik Yak post accused me of misconduct, specifically calling out my comedy group and linking my Instagram. The allegations included inappropriate behavior at parties and making girls uncomfortable. I denied some of it, admitted to past mistakes, but got removed from the group anyway. More friends distanced themselves. I felt like I was finally improving, but my past keeps catching up. Even a future role I earned in a play is now in limbo because someone filed a complaint about me being cast. I'm not looking for pity. I'm trying to do better. I've been sober, gone to therapy, apologized again to V, and avoided putting myself in any risky situations. But I still feel like an outcast, like no one's giving me a chance to change. Any advice on how to rebuild trust, improve my reputation, or meet people outside campus would really help. Story 5. I graduated 10 months ago with a pretty decent GPA. Yet if I'm being honest, I don't think what I acquired during my university years can get me a job in that field. Thankfully, I already have a very nice job as a tech support agent, and it pays well, so I can't complain. Still, I think post-grad depression or dread has gotten to me. I've gained a lot of weight, which amplifies the dread 100 times. I feel so much worse despite wanting to get out of this uncomfortable phase. I'm really trying to get better at the relevant skills required to land a job in my field of study and trying to get back to a better place with my weight and body, but binge eating has taken over. The stress about not feeling competent enough to be where I want to be, along with the weight gain, and this existential crisis of being away from academia is really interfering with any progress. It takes over my entire thought process and leaves me considering the worst. I don't want this. I truly am blessed, yet I think there's something wrong. I don't know why I'm writing this here. I'm really lonely, so I thought I could use some advice. Story 6. So I'm in high school, I 18F, have a friend group I don't really enjoy. Out of the 4 people in it, I only really like one. Their names are Emily, Riley, Sophia, and Layla. The only one I'll be going to the same college with is Sophia. Here's the thing. Layla is the newest in the group. I've known Riley since kindergarten, Emily since 3rd grade, and Sophia since 5th grade. I was a very different person before Layla. She's draining. Sure, she's funny, but in a rude way, and she changed me. I used to be the kind of girl who didn't know how to respond to insults. But once our group started playfully insulting each other, I became meaner, but also more confident the more time I spent around her. She kind of ruined me. Layla was once my favorite in the group, but I was definitely her least favorite until we started hanging out more. Then I became her favorite until she started bonding with Emily. Now their dynamic is unbearable. Their rude, annoying gossip constantly about people in the group, even when we're nearby, and they'll mock you right to your face. Emily has always been rude to me, but never this bratty. Riley isn't the worst, but she once told someone to harm themselves, treat certain friends unfairly, and is not funny at all. I've worked on projects with her and she's always controlling. Same with Layla. I once tried doing a project with Layla, but she insisted on doing it all herself, then later complained that I didn't help, even though I had tried. Back to Riley. She's boring to work with and clearly prefers the popular girls. If we're hanging out and they show up, she'll ditch us in a second. Then everyone in our group starts talking behind her back. Honestly, they all gossip constantly. I've been guilty of it too, but never to the extent that Layla, Riley, and Emily do. Sophia's the only one I genuinely like. She's fun, confident, quirky, and an actually good person. She doesn't talk behind people's backs unless they're being rude or completely out of line. She's the only friend I trust with secrets, and I mean that. I don't trust easily, but her I do. You might be wondering why I haven't cut ties with the other three. The truth is, I don't like change, and I really hate confrontation. I know how these girls are, and I know how they'd react. Anytime I've tried sitting with someone else or talking to other people, they act offended and call me a traitor. So I just stick it out. Sophia is the only one I love, and the rest are just people I tolerate until the school year ends. Story 7. I was a young senior carer in a care home and met the most outrageously rude and nasty woman who should have retired years ago. She was snappy, cruel, and acted like she was the best at everything. She would talk over my handovers, ignore me when I spoke to her, and leave a mess behind for me to clean up. I had enough. After a particularly stressful shift dealing with an unexpected passing, she came on duty and said the most insensitive thing I've ever heard. That was it. I quit. I never went back and haven't seen her since. A few days after I left, I kept thinking about everything she'd done and how she was the main reason I quit. So I thought of the most irritating things I could do to inconvenience her without her knowing it was me. I ended up signing her email address and phone number up for a bunch of annoying things. I registered her for anti-bullying seminars, window replacement quotes, gastric bypass surgery consultations, hair extension offers, she's nearly bald an ad, selling puppies, are you a bad person? Test, guess what score was sent to her inbox, 10 ways to become a better person, and every kind of spam I could think of. It made me laugh for days. Story 8. I've known this girl ever since I was around 12 years old. We didn't like each other at first, but by the time I was 14 and she was 15, things changed. It wasn't until we went on a 3-day camping trip together that we started getting close. That was easy since our moms were also really good friends, so we saw each other a lot. We became so close that we'd share secrets just like best friends do. My mom often warned me that she would tell her mom everything, but I didn't believe it because whenever I asked, she swore up and down that she never said anything serious. It wasn't until a few days ago that I started to really suspect she'd been telling her mom everything, just as I had been warned. I had done something recently and confided in her. That same day, my mom warned me again that she probably told her mom, even things she swore she wouldn't tell anyone. I was confused and asked my other best friend what I should do, and she told me to just confront her, so I did. We argued for around an hour over text, and she couldn't even bring herself to apologize after betraying me and telling her mom private things about me that can't be taken back. From past experience, her mom would usually call mine about these things, which would obviously get me in trouble. We kept going back and forth, and I was getting mentally drained. It felt like I was talking to a wall. She kept playing the victim, saying I was overstepping when all I was doing was confronting her about something that could have easily been avoided. She claimed she was pressured into telling her mom, but I don't buy that. She knows how to avoid questions when she wants to. She could have easily told me, hey, my mom makes me tell her everything, so maybe don't tell me secrets. But no, she let me keep confiding in her like a fool. When I brought that up, she blamed it on her own trust issues, even though she trusted me with her deepest secrets. But she couldn't tell me the truth. I ended the conversation by saying I needed space, and I assured her I would never share her secrets with my mom the way she had so easily done to me. I don't know if what I did was right or wrong, but I don't feel any regret. I feel backstabbed completely by what she did and how she lied about not saying anything when she said everything. Story 9. I never expected it to go this far. It started as a dumb lie to get out of work for a few days. I was exhausted mentally and physically, and when my manager asked why I looked so drained, I blurted out, I have some tests coming back. They think it might be cancer. I don't know why I said it. I just panicked. I thought it would end there. But the next week, she pulled me into a meeting and asked if I needed time off or accommodations. I was cornered, so I nodded. Then came the flowers, the cards. The GoFundMe someone else started without telling me, and I accepted the money. I didn't even need it. But at the time, I told myself it was for therapy, just not the kind people thought. It's been over a year now. I finished treatment. People threw me a celebration. My coworkers cried. One even told me their dad had passed from the same illness and how brave I was. The guilt is a constant weight. Every time I hear of someone actually going through it, I feel sick. I want to confess. I want to give the money back. But I'm afraid of ruining my life of hurting people who were just trying to help. I know what I did was beyond wrong. There's no excuse. I'm not even asking for forgiveness. I just had to finally tell someone. Story 10. I 30 million was bullied throughout my whole school career up until I got to college. I'm a small man, only 5 feet 4 inches, and I was even shorter back then. The bullying got so bad that my parents had to move me to a new school twice. I was quiet, barely spoke to anyone except my family. But all the other boys were bigger than me and I'd be physically bullied. The worst incident was 5 boys jumping me while I was walking home in 4th grade. I remember their names, their faces, and the things they said to me that day. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm married now, and my husband knows I was bullied and is trying to help me get through it. But he doesn't really understand, you know. He's never been bullied. He's tall and strong, so no one messed with him. I feel like no one gets why I can't just move on. The bullying ruined my life, and I still wake up scared thinking about it. I was so lonely. I'm a father now too, and I want to homeschool my son so he won't experience the same kind of trauma I did. I admit I do take it out on others sometimes. I put on an angry front and snap at people who mean well. I do it to protect myself, to keep people from being mean to me. For example, I was at a bar with my older sister a while ago, and some college-looking kids were laughing at something. I immediately assumed they were laughing at me because I was wearing a new shirt I wasn't confident about. I didn't do anything at first, but when one of them glanced at me, I lost it. That confirmed it in my mind. I went off. The worst part is they didn't say anything back. They just looked at me. My sister had to drag me out, and she told me I called one of the guys by the name of one of my old bullies, but I don't even remember doing it. I probably did. I wish I could move on. I don't have many friends. The few I do have were also bullied badly as kids. I don't let people in. I push them away before they can hurt me. I just want to be free of it all. I could go on and on with stories of how I was bullied. I just want the pain to stop affecting me. Story 11. I used to work as a 911 dispatcher. I worked in the comm center that handled all of the fire rescue calls for our county. After being hired, I was in training for about a year. One of the things I learned was dealing with alternate street names. We had a highway called US 1792 that ran through our county and had several alternate street names. For example, one stretch was called Orlando Drive, another stretch was called French Avenue, etc. The problem was we also had a residential street named French Avenue right off that highway. I was trained to enter the address as US 1792 rather than one of the alternate names if someone gave the address as Orlando Drive or French Avenue, because the computer-aided dispatch system wouldn't verify an address using the alternate names. I guess you can already see where this is going. My first shift after finishing training was an overnight from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was assigned to work phones, which was my least favorite position after a year of people screaming in my ear and having to repeatedly ask for an address to dispatch units to. That night was thankfully slow. Around 2 a.m., a woman called about a male patient in his 50s having a stroke. She was fairly calm and gave me the address as soon as I asked. It was on French Avenue, the residential one. Guess what address I entered in unfathomable odds that I could never match when playing the lottery? The same numeric address existed on US 1792. So the computer-aided dispatch system verified the address, and that's where the emergency units were sent. At 2 a.m., it should have taken them 5 minutes max to arrive. It took 15 to 20 minutes. They got to the address they were dispatched to and found it was a closed business. The comm center shift supervisor figured it out, but the delay and mistake were obvious to everyone. Soon after they arrived at the correct location, the paramedics called in. No code, no vitals. The patient had passed. I was written up for the delay, and as part of remedial training sent to do a ride-along with Station 31, the crew that responded. One of the paramedics tried to make me feel better and said the patient had an extensive medical history, was in bad shape, and was probably gone as soon as the call came in. Then another paramedic said the patient took his last breath right as he walked in the door. So much for feeling better, at least for a while. I worked there for about a year after that. The best thing that happened was helping parents of a newborn with a congenital heart defect through CPR after he stopped breathing. He was breathing again as rescue arrived. I held on to that win. After 2 years, I was burned out and knew it was time to move on. You need a dark sense of humor and thick skin to do that job. I knew I was getting too jaded when a motel manager called about a deceased elderly woman in a room. It was just before 11 a.m. I entered the info, turned to the dispatcher and said, "Send them code 3. She has to be out by 11 or they'll charge her for another day. Everyone laughed. Yeah, it was time to leave. Story 12. I-19F come from an Indian abusive family. They are toxic, especially my father, and I feel like they've ruined me for life. I have so many issues and I am so insecure about everything. I feel like I don't deserve a nice, decent guy. I feel like I just bring him down with me. He deserves good in-laws as much as I do, but all he'd get is a group of judgmental, toxic people and a girlfriend with 1,000 issues. I'm scared of intimacy. I'm scared he'll later realize he had to settle for someone like me. I'm scared I won't be able to get along with his family since I don't get along with most of mine. All I've ever seen is selfishness. I can adapt to people, sure, but those kinds of adjustments can't go on forever, right? What if I can't adjust to his family? How would the marriage survive? I'd never want my husband to have to choose between me and his family. On one hand, I feel like I wouldn't be a good wife, mother, or daughter-in-law. On the other hand, I'm also scared that life might give me a bad partner. What if he hurts me or is unfaithful? I have trust issues too, which is why I could never agree to a long-distance relationship. I've lost so much because of these issues. I even let a guy I really loved go without ever telling him how I felt. I tell people I don't want to get married, that life is better without all the drama, but that's not true. Deep down, I want it all. A happy marriage, a kind partner, beautiful and healthy children, everything. I even want to care for his parents and his family like they're my own, but my mind is full of what ifs. All of this makes me feel like I'm not ready for a relationship, and honestly, I don't think I ever will be. Story 13. A little backstory. When I was a teenager, I worked for one of the many dollar store chains. As a cashier, I made $9 an hour, which wasn't cutting it for the bills. This specific store in the chain was poorly managed and unkempt. No security cameras, no AC unit. When summer hit, it was unbearably hot 24/7, and my coworkers were on the verge of heat exhaustion. One woman even passed out from the heat while working. Now, being the reckless kid I was, I noticed the lack of cameras and used it to my advantage. Everyone I knew who shoplifted, I told them the tactics, the rules, the policies. Since there were no cameras in the store, a lot of people took the risk of being seen, including me. Every night, there were usually two of us closing. My coworkers and I made it a routine to void out previous transactions, take the cash if there was any, and then shop the store for whatever we needed. I never once paid for anything while I worked there. Inventory was once a year. By the time that came around, I was long gone, but I know inventory was off by thousands. I don't believe I was the first one to figure it out, but I was definitely the one who told everyone else, and the guilt sits with me. Nobody was ever held accountable, but now there are cameras in every corner of that store. I feel like I ruined the experience of working there, but at the same time, it was a poorly run company with no safety precautions and no concern for its employees. Story 14. I've known these people for years. We went through middle school and high school together, and now we're all drifting into our young adult lives. I used to believe we were close, that they were my real friends, the kind of friends who'd stick around when things got tough, but now I'm not so sure, and it hurts more than I thought it would. It started with small things, casual comments, snide remarks. At first I brushed it off. They're just joking, right? But then it kept happening. More often, more cutting. One friend would casually mention that I'm too quiet and that it makes me hard to hang out with. Another would joke about my clothes like they were ridiculous. Every compliment came with something that made me feel like I wasn't enough. And when things go wrong, I realize how fake they really are. After a tough breakup, I needed someone to talk to, but they barely replied. Yet when they needed something, a ride, a favor, reassurance, they were all over me pretending we were inseparable. The worst part, they still know how to make me laugh. They still know how to pull me back in and make me feel like I belong. That's the trap. I can't leave because I miss the version of myself that I thought I was when I was with them. I keep telling myself, next time I'll speak up, or next time I'll keep my distance. Shurmaunin. But every time we hang out, I get pulled right back in. They know exactly how to make me feel like I'm the problem, like I'm being too sensitive. I keep hoping it's just a phase, that it'll change, but it doesn't. And every time I stay, I feel a little less like myself. I know they're not real friends. I know I'm being used, but I'm scared of what will happen if I finally break free. Story 15. Whether we want to admit it or not, pretty privilege is a real thing, and it's something I now realize I had for the majority of my life. People were usually very kind to me. I got offered perks like free drinks at bars and extra attention when I went out. I was often stared at. That part actually bothered me because I didn't fully understand why. Even though I was considered attractive, I had low self-esteem and didn't realize how much of an impact it had until later. If someone looked at me for too long or smiled at me, I would quickly look away and feel uncomfortable. Then a couple of years ago, I had a health issue that required medication. The medication came with one major side effect: significant weight gain. No matter how little I ate or how much I exercised, my metabolism slowed and I began gaining weight. The more weight I gained, the less attention I received. At first I didn't notice it, but eventually I realized I had to ask for help in stores instead of being offered assistance. I started to feel invisible. No one looked at me. People walked right by without acknowledging I was even there. It was strange at first, then incredibly humbling. I accepted that this was my new reality. My personality changed a little. I became genuinely thankful for small interactions and responded with more gratitude. I noticed others who weren't conventionally attractive or who were overweight, and I made a conscious effort to engage with them, to treat them like they mattered. I became a better person. Not that I wasn't kind before, but I became more empathetic and aware of the world around me. Then I had some good luck. My doctor found a different medication for my condition, one that didn't impact my metabolism. I switched and the weight began to melt off. I didn't have to change anything. My diet and exercise were already healthy. The weight just started coming off. After about a year and a half, I was close to my previous healthy weight. That's when I realized I had regained my pretty privilege. The first time I noticed it, I was in a store looking for something, and a handsome employee approached me and asked if I needed help. He looked me in the eyes. I felt seen again, and then I felt deeply sad, even horrified by the unfairness of it all. The way we look really does affect how people treat us, even though it shouldn't. Now I notice every advantage I receive based on appearance, and I feel both humbled and guilty. I continue to seek out and engage with people who may have once felt invisible to me, and I make a point to treat them with kindness. I'm aware that a simple change in medication gave me back something many people don't have access to, and I don't take that for granted. Story 16. It haunts me that I actually did it. I was young in my early 20s on my own and struggling. I was angry at my employer and thought no one knew I had a spare key. This was long before cameras were common everywhere. It was terrifyingly easy. I left the restaurant unlocked and open and took all the money I could find. I thought that by leaving it open, it would seem more like someone else's fault. It wasn't technically breaking and entering. I was never caught. The money helped me through a tough time, but the guilt never left. Looking back, I remember an old friend once saying that a few people sort of suspected I had something to do with it. The police were called. I was questioned. But when they asked, "Where were you at midnight on this date?" I had an answer ready. I was asleep in bed with my boyfriend. Why? That was it. I had worn gloves and left no evidence. I simply wasn't caught. Thankfully, the business wasn't heavily impacted overall, and obviously I never did anything like that again. I've never told anyone until now. I just wish there were a way to let go of the guilt. Story 17. I'm 30 years old and I've never been in a relationship or had any intimate experiences. Unfortunately, I was born with a condition that has left me extremely self-conscious about my body. As a result of being bullied in school, especially in locker rooms, I developed a deep fear of in relationships and generally avoid being around women. For the most part, I've come to terms with it. I tried therapy, but I never found it helpful. Therapists often dismissed my experiences, insisting that it was all in my head. It's frustrating when people make jokes and then try to convince you it's your imagination. But at the end of the day, I've learned to focus on other parts of life. To me, the risk of being rejected or humiliated has always outweighed the potential reward of having a partner. I've always believed that any woman who dated me would feel like she had to settle like I was a consolation prize. I've also felt disqualified from being part of casual dating or exploring certain aspects of intimacy. That realization solidified my decision to step away from dating entirely. Last week, a beautiful woman I work with asked me out. She had shown clear interest in me, and I could tell she was hoping I'd say yes. I said no, as I always do. I gave the usual explanation that I don't date coworkers and that I'm not looking for a relationship right now. People at work know I've turned someone down before, so I think she knew it wasn't personal. I know I made the right choice. Any emotional connection would fall apart the moment she saw what I'm so ashamed of, but I still feel a lingering sense of sadness. Maybe regret is the wrong word, but there's a kind of heaviness knowing I have to reject people because of something beyond my control. I know some people will downplay what I'm saying. I've seen it before. People saying it doesn't matter, comparing me to other experiences and trying to convince me it's not a big deal. But nothing anyone says will ever change the reality I live in or the choices I've made for my own protection. Maybe life would be different if I were different, but I'm not. So I live this way by choice, practicing celibacy out of self-preservation. I turn down the small handful of women who've shown interest. I'd rather live alone forever than face the rejection I fear would come if anyone ever really saw me. Story 18. During my second year in college, I was overwhelmed. I was behind in several courses, working late shifts, and on the verge of flunking out. Instead of seeking help right away, I lied. I told the Student Disability Services that I had dysgraphia, a neurological disorder that affects writing and fine motor skills. I researched everything, how it's diagnosed, the unusual symptoms, even how my handwriting should look. I claimed I had been undiagnosed for years and said I struggled with note-taking and writing essays under time pressure. I told them typing was easier and that I couldn't keep up with in-class work. I even made my handwriting sloppier during tests to match the lie. Within a week, I had a letter from the office that gave me privileges, extra time on exams, the right to type instead of handwrite, and even access to a note-taker in class. Professors went out of their way to support me. Some even told me they were proud I was pushing through. But I wasn't. I was cheating. I saw students around me genuinely struggling, some with dyslexia, others with mobility issues. And here I was abusing a system meant to help them. The worst part, I didn't even need an A. I just didn't want to admit I was drowning. I eventually graduated and no one ever found out. But I haven't forgotten. That fake diagnosis got me through school, but it also rewired my conscience. I've since donated regularly to learning disability organizations and volunteered with accessibility groups, but it still feels hollow. I disrespected a community I now deeply admire, and that diploma I earned, it still feels tainted. Story 19. I was in kindergarten at the time, and there was one black boy in our class. Let's call him M. The majority of students were white, and he was always treated like an outcast. The teacher never made him feel included. Prior to the incident, M had tried to kiss me or do something inappropriate, so I went home and told my mom. She went to the principal, they talked to M, and he got in trouble. Now, I don't know what drove me to do this because I had no ill feelings toward M. I wasn't racist or anything. I just saw him as a boy who had a crush on me. But out of nowhere, while I was hanging out with my mom, I told her that M tried to kiss me again. This time it was a complete lie. I don't know why I did it. I had been experiencing things at home. My older brother was hurting me at the time, so maybe it came from that. Though I don't want to shift blame. My mom was shocked and furious. She went back to the principal and brought me with her. I felt horrible the entire time. I kept asking myself, why did I do that? Am I a bad person? What's wrong with me? The worst part, M tried to deny it, but no one believed him. It was supposedly the second time, and he was black in a predominantly white school. Looking back, I know there were underlying racial biases at play. After everything, I went home feeling incredibly guilty. That guilt stayed with me for weeks until I couldn't take it anymore. I remember lying in bed sobbing next to my mom. She asked me what was wrong. I confessed everything, that I had made the whole story up. My mom was dumbfounded and clearly frustrated, though she was also half asleep at the time and didn't react right away. The next morning, she kept asking me about it, why I lied. I just remember crying and saying I didn't know. She was understandably angry with me, but we never went back to tell the principal the truth. I know that's awful. Life just moved on. Today I'm 18 and my mom brought it up again. She said, I never understood why you did that. Looking back, I still don't fully understand it either, but I do still feel incredibly guilty. Story 20. When I was 10, a classmate stopped me and said, "You're so ugly, no one will ever love you?" When she said it, she looked genuinely disgusted by the sight of me. I've never forgotten a single detail from that moment. It was completely unprovoked. We'd never had any issues. We'd been in school together for 6 years and had always gotten along. It felt random at the time and just made me feel a little sad. The problem is, it kept happening. Over the years, people have felt far too comfortable telling me that I'm unattractive right to my face. In middle school, a few girls made similar comments. It happened a few more times in high school. Then in my early 20s, I dated a few people, and every single one cheated on me. I was told that I just didn't do it for them. I've been mostly single ever since, despite trying from time to time. I'm now 40, it's been 30 years since that first comment, and it still happens. The last 5 people I went on dates with all told me the same thing. You're a great person, but I'm just not physically attracted to you. Some said it gently, others were brutally honest. Last year I met a woman who seemed perfect for me. We had everything in common, shared goals, similar values. She even told me she'd never met someone who checked every box like I did. And then she added that she had been trying to get over not being physically attracted to me but couldn't. She said it like she was the victim, as if people should feel bad for her for finding her ideal partner, but not being attracted enough. I thought that as I approached 40 things would get easier. But honestly, it's only gotten worse. Male beauty standards are rough even for those dating people in their 40s. I know it's irrational to let something from childhood affect me this deeply, but it might not have if it had only happened once. Story 21. I 18F don't plan on living past 35. When my poodle passes away, I plan to go with him. He's 5 years old now and has had 3 major life-threatening incidents since I got him. He was hit by a car at 1, ate 2 full chocolate cakes at 2, and had a stomach flip at 3. Thankfully, years 4 and 5 have been calm for him, but now I'm the one with life-threatening experiences. I posted once before about my childhood, where I was in a severely abusive situation involving both parents until I turned 14. My parents struggled with addiction, and I was treated as their blessing. I've been in therapy for 9 years. Out of 10 therapists, only 3 have really helped me begin to process my trauma. I've known from a young age that I wouldn't live long. I started self-harming at 5 and my first serious attempt was at 7. There have been around 15 attempts in total since. The only reason I'm still here is my dog. I know no one else would care for him the way I do. He wouldn't be given a chance just like me. He's a standard poodle and came into my life during the pandemic when I was 13. He was a surprise gift 3 years after I'd escaped the worst of my trauma. I had just come out of a depressive episode when I got him. I was terrified. My father used to abuse animals and I grew up witnessing it. I was scared I'd be the same. The beginning was hard. I was still unstable and not emotionally equipped to care for a dog, but I was determined to break the cycle. I potty trained him in a week. I taught him to sit. I walked him on good days and forced myself to walk him on bad ones, even when I was in chronic pain, because my guardians didn't believe me. I taught myself how to bathe him. I remember how badly my hands shook the first time, because all I could see was my father harming a puppy. I had to face all of that trauma to care for him much earlier than I was ready, but we made it. Now he's my everything. He's reactive from being attacked by other dogs, but he's incredibly protective. He's smart, quirky, afraid of balloons and mirrors, but fierce when it comes to protecting me. He loves cuddles and being the little spoon. He's annoying sometimes, but he's mine. He's the closest thing to a child I'll ever have. He's also the only reason I made it to 18. I was planning to end my life at 13. I even had the location picked out. But then he came into my life. His name is Latte, and I'm so thankful I got to raise him. I also have an orange cat named Mufasa. He's laid back, not picky, and cuddly on his own terms. I rescued him during a snowstorm and have plans in place for someone to care for him when I'm gone. Mufasa and Latte get along. They're not overly affectionate, but they coexist peacefully. I know it sounds harsh to say I'm staying for one and not the other, but Latte is different. I know his trauma. I know his triggers. If I left, he wouldn't survive emotionally or physically. No one else would see past his fear-based behavior, and he could be put down. Mufasa, on the other hand, will be just fine. He's a declawed rescue who can still catch mice like a pro. He's a very good boy. As for me, I've been through too much. I've been assaulted repeatedly 5 times just in the last year, over 100 times in my lifetime. One of those cases is going to trial, but I don't have faith that it'll go far. I recently found out my guardian stole $8,000 from me and have been benefiting financially from my disability without giving me anything. I'm about to become an aunt. My insurance is messed up, and I may have to stop therapy, but I keep telling myself I only have a little longer to go. Story 22. This is going to be a bit of a long one, so I apologize in advance. This happened a few years ago, and I still regret it, so I want to get it off my chest. At the time, I was 13. I'm 15 now. I walked into the bathroom at school, and some boys, some my age, some older, started mocking me. One of them took things way too far. He said something awful about what he would do to my sister and my mother, and then proceeded to make disturbing noises and motions toward the bathroom counter. I was furious. I regret it now, but I punched him in the face and gave him a bloody nose. He punched me back, and I ran. Maybe that was cowardly, but there were more of them than me, and I didn't know what else to do. Later that day, I went back to the bathroom during class, and that same boy was in there alone scrolling on his phone. I know now that what I did was wrong, and I do regret it, but when he looked up, smiled, and made that same sound again, I snapped. I punched him a couple more times harder this time, and left him pretty badly hurt. I got really angry and lost control. I ended up getting a 1-week out of school suspension for it. I've been holding on to this for a while now, and just needed to get it off my chest. I think it hit me so hard because my sister was only 6 at the time, and my mom was going through a rough period. She was a victim of domestic violence, but I know that's not an excuse. Story 23. So I'm a 22-year-old female doing my master's. I've disliked men for most of my life and have never been in a relationship, but I made a few good friends in my class, including one guy who used to talk to me a lot during the early days. He used to flirt a little, not overly, but enough that it made me feel a bit uncomfortable. He'd touch my hand lightly or tease me, and since I'd never had any close male friends before, it all felt very strange. I'd get irritated, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make things awkward. I noticed he was close with other girls too, so I figured that's just how he was, but he'd go out of his way to help me with my college work. He'd show up at places he hadn't planned to go just because I was going. He taught me math like you'd teach a little kid with patience and care. I developed a soft spot for him after that, and even gave him a small gift to thank him. We started studying together on calls for exams, nothing major. Later on, I found out he had a girlfriend. We had joked about it before, but he never mentioned her seriously. It almost felt like he was hiding her. That's when it hit me. I shouldn't have let him get so close to me, even as a friend. I started feeling guilty. The little flirts which I hadn't asked for made me feel like I was somehow in the wrong. Now I think that soft corner is growing into something more, and I really don't want that. He gives me little signs that he likes me. He does things I like. He treats me more gently than he treats other girls. And even when I do something wrong, he just smiles. I know none of that is a reason to feel this way, but I can't explain it. I hate feeling like this. Our group has gone to the movies, and he always wants to sit next to me, subtly making physical contact. And even though it's wrong, I've started to enjoy that closeness. And I don't know why. That's not who I am. I don't know why I feel this way. Why is he doing this? He seems happy with his girlfriend. He goes out with her every week, so why this behavior with me? I feel bad for myself and worse for his girlfriend. I never wanted this, and I should have set boundaries earlier. I'm just so confused and frustrated right now. Story 24. Hi, I'm 28 million, and it's 12:20 a.m. I didn't get a single call today. I have tickets for a Coldplay concert on January 26th, my favorite band, and I don't even want to go anymore. I have 3 extra tickets, but not even one friend agreed to come with me. I booked those in hopes someone would join me. The seats are Block B lower WW100 to WW103. If you happen to see those seats empty, just know I wasn't there. And it's not because I didn't want to attend. It's because I couldn't bear to go alone. It's not just about the concert. I live alone and my family lives in another town. I see people getting tagged in tons of birthday stories and posts, but no one ever tags me. I didn't even get a call from my family. I had one friend who used to call exactly at midnight every year, but not today. I asked my office colleagues if they'd celebrate my birthday with me. I even offered to sponsor the drinks and cake. They said they already had weekend plans. I hope I'm not a terrible person. I don't think I am. I always wish people on time. I've never intentionally hurt anyone, and if I did, I'm sorry. I never meant to. Maybe people don't like how I look. I have vitiligo, and I'm not as successful as others my age. I'm a bit underconfident. Maybe that's why people avoid me. I don't know, but I didn't choose to have this condition. I just ended up with it. Still, people treat me differently, and I think they hate me for it. Even when I was in school, I got bullied for my skin. I remember one time I got really offended because kids were making jokes about my condition. They beat me up for reacting. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe if I had laughed with them, it could have turned into a friendship. Maybe they would have wished me today. I think I've always been the problem. Even my parents seem to love my brother more. He's successful, married, living abroad with his wife and dog. They're amazing. They didn't wish me either. But it's still not the end of his workday. He's in a different time zone. Maybe he just forgot. Last year he forgot too. He had a big project then. It's understandable. I truly hope he becomes even more successful. My friend who always called didn't this year. He said he was traveling. Maybe that's true. Maybe people just forget me because I'm not that important. And that's okay. I don't really add much. I just exist. I try to bring value to others, but maybe I'm not enough. I think that's why people don't call me. Maybe after I'm gone, they'll remember. My ex got married to someone else recently. She made the right decision. Who would want someone who's always vulnerable? When she told me she was getting married in 3 weeks, I didn't cry or say anything emotional. I just congratulated her and left. She probably thought I didn't care, but I did. I was heartbroken, not heartless. I just didn't show it. Maybe now you understand why I feel like a terrible person, and maybe you understand why I wonder if it would be better to just sleep forever, not knowing what happens next. Story 25. My father was extremely abusive. He used to scream at us, constantly telling us how worthless we were, and he was physically violent too. Eventually, my mother reached her breaking point. She told him that unless he got psychological help, she was leaving him. He agreed to see a doctor and was prescribed an antipsychotic medication. And then everything changed. Suddenly, he was kind. No more yelling. No more violence. For the first time, our house felt safe. It felt like a miracle, but it didn't last. After a while, he turned cruel again. We asked our mom what had happened, and she told us he stopped taking the medication because he didn't like the side effects, whatever that meant. We felt helpless, like that brief moment of peace had been snatched away. Then one day, my mom left his prescription bottle in the kitchen. Whether it was intentional or not, I still don't know. My sister and I looked at each other and didn't say a word. She grabbed a spoon and I crushed one of the pills into powder. We mixed it into his orange juice. That day was peaceful. So was the next and the one after that. We did it every day until the bottle was empty. That month was the best part of our childhood. We finally experienced what it felt like to live without fear, even if only temporarily. We never told anyone. And no, I'm not sorry, not even a little. Story 26. I married a 40-year-old when I was 19. We started dating when I was 17. Yes, it was gross. But that's what happened. The only reason he married me was because I was attractive. The only reason I married him was because he had money. I do have other redeeming qualities, but let's be honest. He married me because of how I looked. I know it. Everyone knows it. It doesn't feel great, but I've learned to deal with it. We've now been married for 20 years. We have 4 kids. We're stable, and we have a lot in common at this point. We do love each other. If I could go back in time and slap some sense into my younger self, I would. Here's what no one tells you, or they try, and you don't listen because you're a teenager and think you know everything. Marrying like this means you will feel like you owe him for everything every single day, not just emotionally or physically, but in every decision, every corner of your life. The kind of control you can't imagine someone else having. And it's not just about the money, it's heavier than that. He'll never say it out loud, but you'll know the deal. It's fundamentally unequal. He'll pull rank at the most unexpected times, and it'll make you feel like the floor is dropping out from under you. I don't hate my life. I accept that I made this bed, and now I lie in it. But I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else. My oldest daughter is just 2 years younger than I was when I met my husband, and I honestly can't imagine it. Story 27. I've got a mate who's nearly 30 now. To be honest, he's not the most conventionally attractive guy. But what matters more is that he's never had any romantic experience, which sucks because he's genuinely a great person. He has friendships with some women, but he always seems to friend zone himself before he can ask anyone out. He's dealt with some serious anxiety and depression over the years, and really hates going out. So, this year at my birthday, one of the only events he'll come to, because he knows it matters to me, I decided to try something small that might help. I asked a couple of women at the party if I could buy them a drink, and if they'd be willing to chat with him briefly and compliment him on something. No pressure, no expectation. Just be polite and kind. And my goodness, it made such a difference. He's been a different person since that night. His confidence has shot up. He's been asking when we're going out next. It's like something clicked. If he ever found out what I did, I genuinely think he'd never leave the house again. But honestly, I don't regret it. Story 28. When I was 18, I worked at a Piggly Wiggly grocery store. After the meat department staff went home around 3 p.m., it became part of my job to restock meat on the sales floor during the evening. At the time, my mom worked nights, and my stepdad would usually be passed out drunk by the time I got home. That meant there was rarely dinner for my little brother and me, so I'd always bring him home whatever he wanted, usually junk food like Hot Pockets, chips, that kind of stuff. I went through a big steak phase myself. Growing up, we rarely had steak. It felt like a luxury, so I started doing something that felt small at first but definitely wasn't right. I'd find the thickest steak we had in the cooler and change the sticker price. Instead of being $11.99 a pound, I'd switch it to $1.99 a pound, making it way cheaper. I did that probably twice a week for over a year and was never caught. Story 29. I'm overweight, as you can probably tell from the title. I've been trying to lose weight for years now, and while I've made some progress, I'm still clinically obese, though not morbidly. My sister's also obese, but she's closer to being morbidly obese than I am. Yesterday I went on Instagram and her profile popped up. I hadn't seen her in almost 5 years, and I don't usually check family members' social media, but I ended up scrolling through. While looking through her selfies, I had a realization that shook me. Her face is my face. I had never noticed how much we actually looked alike, but seeing that selfie felt like looking into a mirror, and I was horrified. I know that sounds awful, but growing up, my sister was always considered the least attractive among us siblings. Realizing I looked even slightly like her wasn't a pleasant discovery. I realized the similarity is mostly due to our shared face shape, round and pudgy. And as bad as it sounds, seeing her made me feel even more determined to lose weight. I can't change our basic features without surgery, but I hope that with weight loss, I'll feel like we look less alike, and I won't feel so awful about my appearance. I know this makes me sound like a terrible sister for saying she's unattractive, but it's not just her facial structure. She also doesn't take care of herself. Her hair is stringy and overdyed, and she recently got multiple face piercings, which is a personal choice, but I think they don't look great most of the time. I'm probably going to see her in a little over a year, and I feel this pressure to lose the weight before then, just in case anyone comments on how much we look alike.